that has played a very huge role because I haven't been able to connect fully.
Hello, print friends, and welcome. I'm your host, Miranda Metcalf. I release weekly episodes with people around the world who share our love of printmaking. If you like what we do, please rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts. That really does make a difference. Or just tell a fellow print friend about the podcast, and maybe they'll enjoy it too. We also have a Patreon page where supporters can join at tiers starting at just $1 a month, and that really helps keep us bringing you printmaking content every week. You can also get thank yous like exclusive merchandise as well as access to our bonus content, Shop Talk with our editor, Timothy Pauschak. These are chats for the printmaker's printmaker. They talk about color theory, materials, chemistry, and lots of nuts and bolts down-to-earth professional advice. How do you get a solo exhibition? How do you balance teaching and making? How did you get that gig teaching in the first place? So if that sounds like something you're interested in, you can check out the link in the show notes to sign up and hear Tim's chat with today's guest. And if you want to save a little cash and still support the show, you can now sign up for a yearly subscription and save 15% off your tier price. We also have merch, printmaking jokes on t-shirts, and Hello Print swag, available now through TeePublic. Printmaking forever, shun the non-believers. Hello Print Friend is brought to you by Speedball Art Products, who've been supporting printmakers with high-quality products since 1997. That's why they've partnered with some of today's most well-respected artists and friends of the pod, such as Steve Prince, Delita Martin, Jamal Barber, and Angela Pilgrim, all of which create Speedball's professional artist network. And if you're looking to join the pros and want to be featured on Speedball yourself, head on over to speedballart.com to find out how you can apply. This episode of Hello Print Friend is also brought to you by McLean's Printmaking Supplies, who've been dedicated to the art and artists of relief printmaking since 1979. Their small specialist team in the Pacific Northwest is the leading supplier of Japanese relief tools for printmakers in the US and abroad, whose primary purpose is to help you find the materials and support you need to reach your printmaking goals. In addition to their high-quality Japanese carving tools, McLean's has resources, books, DVDs, and information on how to use everything you need to make a woodblock, from barons and blocks to paper and whetstones. So head on over to McLean's at imcleans.com or follow the link in the show notes and learn something new today. My guest this week is Sandra C. Fernandez. We'll talk about dislocation, relocation, memory, and self-conscious identity construction. Also, the Consejo Grafico Nacional, an organization that brings together Latino Printmaking Tallers throughout the United States, of which she just happens to be the executive director. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and prepare to connect cultures with Sandra C. Fernandez. Hi, Sandra. How's it going?
Hi, Miranda. Good. How are you doing?
I'm really good. I'm so happy we're getting a chance to connect and to chat.
I know. It's an honor for me to be being interviewed by you and to be part of this podcast. So thank you.
Oh, wonderful. That's so sweet of you to say. Yeah, we're really excited to have you. And we always love being able to do the bilingual episodes with interesting and dynamic printmakers out there in the world. So you'll be chatting with Ronaldo as well. And we look forward to definitely sharing both talks. Yeah.
I'm so excited about it too.
So before we get into our questions, I always invite my guests to introduce themselves just by answering the questions, who you are, where you are, and what you do.
Sure. So I am an artist, a former professor. I live currently in Parlin, New Jersey. Yeah, so I am so many things. I am a mixed media artist, I would say. I am a photographer. I am a printmaker. I do soft sculpture. I do installation work. I do a little bit of fiber arts work. So it's a combination of all these. Actually, it's a combination of all these things together, separately and together, depending on what I'm working on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, where did you grow up, and what role did art play in that part of your life?
Okay, so it's an interesting story. I was born in New York, but before I turned 1 year old, I moved back to my mother's home country, Ecuador. So I grew up in Quito, Ecuador, since I was 1 year old until about 22 years old that I migrated back to the United States. So I've been here in the United States ever since. Growing up, well, I really became an artist with that full title, moving back to the United States after when I was already a young adult. Growing up, I was always looking at art and seeing art and being influenced by the amazing handcraft work that exists in Ecuador, and also not only the handcraft work but also fine art artists. But I never, in my imagination, would have thought that I would become one of them. But before I migrated back to the United States, I took photographs. I wouldn't consider myself a photographer back then. I always had a camera on me, and I would record everything. But it was more snapshots. So that actually became the base of my artistry, I would say, when I moved back to the United States.
And so you said you grew up. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the city. You said Quito. Is it a big city? Is it a artistic city? What is it like?
Well, Quito is a beautiful city in Ecuador. It is the capital, and it's actually in the mountains area. It's surrounded by the Andes, and Quito sits really in the basin of it around, and you see all the mountains surrounding the city. Since I've moved back and since I lived there, it has grown enormously. And when I was a child, the mountains were green. Now the mountains are occupied by homes, by houses. Wow. So it has really grew and expanded upwards, and in a way that actually is dangerous now, in terms of the environment. But Quito, it's also a beautiful colonial city. There are like 23 churches in a very reduced square footage in the downtown area, the old part of the city. And all these churches were built in colonial times. So those have been kept, and nowadays, lately in the last few years, they have been renovated, and it's just a beautiful, gorgeous place to be. It's a combination of the old and the old world and the new world. So it's quite beautiful. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. And then was there, you mentioned sort of the craft, I imagine, as the capital as well. Did it have contemporary art and art galleries and museums? Was that at all a part of your early influence?
Yes and no. So about 80% of the population back when I was growing up was actually more, 90%, I would say, indigenous population. And we have many nations of indigenous people throughout Ecuador. So every group, every ethnicity would have their own artisany and their own way of making art. So there would be these fairs, and you would see all these people selling things in the streets or in markets. So that's one side, and then the other side, yes, the museums and the fine arts. And we have big names throughout Latin America that come from Ecuador. Like Guayasamín is one name, Kingman, so on and so forth. So I did have an influence from both areas of art making, I would say. But also in my own work, I do bring all those, I bring in all that background into my work. And when I was studying art, I really made an effort to incorporate them and to blend them. So you will see in some of my work, like my artist books, in my prints also, I combine things that I learned, like weaving and sewing and basketry and things like that. So my background is a combination of all these ways of making art.
Absolutely, yeah. And so where did printmaking come into your story? How did you find it?
Oh, printmaking, my first love. So going back to Ecuador, I was always an admirer of art and artists. And back in the day, we had a lot of fairs, book fairs, and to add something to my background, I grew up surrounded by books. My grandfather was a bibliophile, and his livelihood was buying and selling books, Ecuadorian books, and beyond. So I would, since very very young, I was surrounded by books, and I was always very interested in reading and in books. So there were all these fairs, and when I was growing up. There was a lot of influence from Central Mexico, Central America, as to what was going on politically. So Marxism and liberation theology and all these movements, social movements were very present. So these book fairs were tied with acquiring knowledge about all these social movements. So Cuba played a big role. Cuba was also very influential in within the youngsters, and in this period of time. So during these art book fairs, they will bring posters. And they were posters about political things, but also the Cuban stands will bring the Cuban posters, beautiful silk screens that always capture my eye. So that's when I was drawn first to printmaking. I had no idea what it was. There were silk screens. I had no idea what. I was just so attracted to them, and I actually bought a few back then. So that's how my interest started. But then, I never made anything out of it. I loved collecting art, and I did buy a few little things. I was a student. I didn't have any money, but I started collecting a little, buying little things, posters here and there. And I would just, have them in my room, in my house, hanging there. So then, when I moved to the United States, I guess I picked up that interest and all those influences, because I knew how beautiful these things were, and once I realized that I could do something like that, everything kind of came back to me. So that would be my first connection to printmaking growing up.
And maybe you said this earlier, but you said when you moved back to the U.S., where did you end up? Where did you move back to?
Oh, my goodness. So I came to California first, to the Mojave Desert.
Oh,
and yes. So, and then I moved all over the United States. I was married then, and me and my ex-husband, we went to a lot of places within the U.S., but California was the first. And then immediately after California, after 3 months, we went to Madison, Wisconsin, and there's where I studied art.
I know Madison is a wonderful place to study printmaking. It's one of the top schools, and I think that they're hosting, I believe, the next SGCI conference as well. So yes. There'll be a lot of printmaking at Madison coming up soon too.
I know. But the funny thing is that I landed in printmaking, I landed in Madison, Wisconsin without even knowing. And I actually ended up in this program without having any idea of it. Yes, things in my life have happened out of serendipity. It's almost like things have fell onto my lap without much planning,
Mm.
but the results have been so magnificent, so wonderful for me. So I feel very blessed about all these things that have happened to me in my life.
Yeah.
So going back to coming to the U.S. Um, so I had to leave Ecuador for political circumstances, and when I moved to the United States, I didn't really know what I wanted to do or what I was going to do, what was going to be of my life. So I had studied sociology in the university and literature, but when I moved, nothing made sense.
Mm.
So, and I had been studying for over 3 years already. I didn't graduate, but I had all that schooling. But at the same time, I didn't want to continue to do that. I always struggled with those areas of study. I was very interested, but I was not interested too much into the theory of it, and all that complexity of study. So when I moved to the United States, I was like, so what am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? I had no idea. So I remember clearly when I moved to Madison, I was trying to figure out what to do, and I went to Memorial Union, which is the center where all the students gather, and where you find flyers and things. So I
Mm.
found this flyer, or this brochure rather, of these night classes that they offered. And I was looking through and I was like, maybe there's something here that I can do or that would motivate me. So to make the story short, I saw that there was a graphic design class.
Mm.
And I'm like, this sounds interesting. I'm going to try it out. So I did it and I loved it. And from that minute, I fell in love with the whole art design slash graphic, everything. Um, and I also realized that I was good using my hands,
Mm.
the small motor skills. So I did that class, and then that is what made me want to pursue it further. But again, I had been studying like 3.5 years college, and I was like, I'm done with it. I just want to do something like something fast. And my future wasn't very, I wasn't really, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I thought, okay, I'm just gonna look for a 2-year degree. I want something fast, something practical, and I just want to work. I want to be able to work. So, so I went to this place called Madison Area Technical College, and I signed up for it, and I loved it. I learned more graphic design. I continued to do photography. So this time I did learn actually how to do
Yeah.
photography, how to develop, how to do all of it. And then I learned videotaping and slideshows. Back then it was slideshows, multi-image, and all related to it. And then, I graduated from that program. And for the first time, so again, going back to Ecuador, I wasn't the best student. I always struggled. So in here, I was getting A's, and everything was coming so easy. And I felt, oh my God, I'm not even, I mean, I'm working hard on this, but it's coming so naturally that, I'm having such a great time. So I decided, okay, I'm going to continue. So I transferred my credits to the University of Wisconsin. And I finished my bachelor's there in art. So I got a bachelor's degree in art. And actually, that's when I was introduced to printmaking,
Mm.
and I fell in love with it. So I started, you take all the regular classes, drawing and painting and everything. And I took a printmaking class, and that was it. It hooked me up. That was it. I was like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. So I continued. I learned all the techniques that were available for me to learn, and And then, of course, I wasn't satisfied. So I continued. Then I got my Master of Arts and then my Master of Fine Arts. And my life just became so rich and so full. So, and you were mentioning before that UW is such a great program. Yes, it is. And to be honest with you, I didn't know that it was so great. And the thing is that, being a migrant, I mean, not having lived here, I had no idea how the university systems work. I had no idea that you research all your life to go to the school that you wanted. I didn't know any of these things because in Ecuador, that's not how things are. You go to the only thing there's available, and that's it. Well, at least during my time. So I had no idea, and it was such an amazing opportunity for me. Now looking back, I wish that I would have taken more advantage of it because I was just there learning what I love to learn, and then after I graduated and started teaching and going to SGC and all these things is when I realized, oh my God, I had all these amazing people as professors there that unfortunately were on leave when I was studying there most of the time, because that's what happens, with amazing professors. They're on leave, and TAs are the ones teaching the classes. So I didn't get the chance to work with a lot of those people that I would have loved to work with. But I did get a lot of the great training from a lot of them.
I was just thinking what you're saying, and I definitely understand that feeling of, not showing up somewhere and really not knowing how it works, having had an immigrant experience myself in 2 countries, and these ideas that you're dropped into this water that most everyone else has been swimming in since they were born. And so you just don't know how things work, and people don't even think to explain to you, and not out of malice, but just out of the fact that they can't see the forest from the trees because they've been living in the forest their whole lives, and it would be, the same way in my own home country too. So I just really kind of identify with that feeling of just learning that, it doesn't work that way, and then kind of just being lucky and falling into something. And I think for a lot of people, whatever school they go to can be a bit of luck as well, because you can go and you can visit, but you never know what it's like to work with a professor until you're in it. You never know what you're getting into. And then, of course, when you're young and you're just starting out, you don't even have anything to compare it to. So it's so interesting. I always think that maybe later in life, I'd like to go back and be a student again, because I just, I was just such like a babe in the woods when I started just wandering around, like not understanding how any of it worked.
I know. Isn't that something? And that's why I was so interested in being a professor and mentor and doing mentorship. Because I really felt that I fell through the cracks in a way. I was very lucky because I did have some great mentors at UW. I work with Cavalier Ketchum, which was he was a Latino professor, and oh my goodness, and he was a photographer, and I studied photography as an undergraduate too, and he was such an amazing person because he was probably the only person that took interest, like deep interest in me and who I was. And I brought this back to when I was a professor at the University of Texas in Austin. I wanted to become this mentor to help and give a hand to all these Latino students, Latinx students that didn't have the opportunity. Even though, and there are other categories we can talk about, we live in this country, but there are not the same opportunities, for all the people that have been living here and have lived here. So I just wanted to offer my knowledge, and give a hand as much as I could. And still, even being a professor, I needed mentorship myself, which I didn't get, by the way. But so it's very interesting because there are all these tiers, all these things, and as you get older, you realize, I should have, and I wish that, but that's I mean, you cannot regret things, right? You can just
No.
change your future.
Yeah. And you can just
But
learn,
yeah,
that's it.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
I'd love to get a chance to talk about your work more in the specific. And
Yeah,
you write that it's about transborder experiences of exile, dislocation, relocation, memory, and self-conscious identity construction / reconstruction, which,
yes.
it sounds like a mouthful when I just read it all out like that, but I feel like it's very much sort of present in your work and again, kind of as someone who's lived outside of my home country for the last 3 years, I think I understand in a way that I wouldn't have 5 years ago
Hmm.
the depth of exploring those themes and
Hmm.
how just completely dislocating and jarring it can be to leave home, leave this whole set of structures, social norms, languages that you knew. And then on the other side, it's just you, but you
Hmm.
don't have any of your touch points to remind you of who you are anymore.
Yes.
And it's really interesting to learn how much you construct your identity based on people around you, based on circumstances, based on your job, based on how other people see you, and to
Hmm.
land thousands of miles away with none of that structure in place and realizing you can rebuild it,
Hmm.
and you can do that in a very self-conscious way as well if you were interested in it, in doing so. So anyway, I love all of the topics. I find them super fascinating. How do they manifest in your work for you?
Okay, so the transborder experiences of exile. So my work since the beginning has been obviously, about who I am, about my cultural background. Since the very beginning, it was very important to me to not lose sight of where I came from and who I was. The As I said before, I had to leave Ecuador. It wasn't by choice. And I also talk about this, like growing up, even though I was a U.S. citizen. Uh, I was always against the politics and the policies of the U.S. against the world, especially against Central America and South America. So I had this resentment, and I always saw the United States as the empire, as this powerful place that capable of doing so many things. So I wasn't very excited about the idea, but when things happen and I found myself having to leave the country, the only place that I could go was the U.S. because I was a citizen. So I moved here, and my father actually lived in the United States, and I didn't grow up with him, and I had visited him on several occasions for summer vacation. I came like 3 or 4 times, maybe 5, to see him. So I was familiar and I liked it, but at the same time, of course, I was so attracted to all the things that I found here. It was a push and pull for me. And this push and pull translates to so many aspects of my life. The duality of this saying, I'm not from here, I'm not from there, or my bilingualism, and all these dualities that I have carried in my life. So anyways, going back. So I moved. So when I started making work, I didn't start talking about my political background until probably later. When I started doing printmaking is when I started to talk about these issues that I had experienced, and for me it was a very traumatic time of my life, and even when I produced these prints, the first prints that I made. I didn't talk about them, and actually I made them, I presented in classes, and I buried them in drawers until a few years back. Like I never showed them to anybody. And so then when I moved to Texas in 2005, and this is another story that is going to come together when we talk about Consejo Grafico Nacional. So these prints were made and they were buried, and so that's, going back to your first question about the exile. But then, so I really didn't want to talk about those experiences. I kind of pushed them back inside of me. But then I started thinking about my culture and the legacy for my children. At one point when I was in grad school, actually towards the end, I was pregnant of my first son, and this really made me think about issues of cultural issues, heritage, and I started making work about who I was, where I came from, and this really helped me assert my place, or a place in this new culture. It really helped me grab me onto something. I mean, I needed to know that I was someone, that I had a past, that I had a whole life before coming here that was very important, that was deep, that was emotional, that was nurturing, that was beautiful. Also, so I started making artist books that would talk about that. But actually photography was first. Like, I carried on my photographic interests, and I wanted to, again, this idea of not connecting, of not feeling part of. And I wanted to feel part of it. So I started taking pictures of the odd, quote unquote, the different. I was very influenced by Diane Arbus's work, for example, in photography, to mention, a name. And then also I started taking pictures about Hispanics. Like, it was my first approach and try to connect with others like me. But of course, it was never like me, because every person's experience is so different, and you're never going to find what you left, unless you move to a community that was exactly like yours. So I always had this void, of this identity, not identity void, but this community void of trying to find a community and to try to feel that I was at home. And I actually never found that until I moved to Texas, going back to Texas. Memory started to play a big role in my work also, through remembering my childhood memories. My childhood was a really beautiful, loving childhood, but at the same time, I was scarred because I felt abandoned by my father. So I grew up with this void, with this big hole in my heart that I was left. So that played a super huge role in my upbringing, and so I started making work about that, and about my experiences meeting my father for the first time when I was 3 years old, and then these memories moved to thinking about my role as a like what the things that happened to me as being a girl, a woman, and then later on my role as a woman, as a wife, as a daughter, all these things. So my work has been very personal. It was very personal for a long time, and then again, Texas kind of marked me in such a wonderful way that it kind of changed the course of the course of my of my art making. So trying to figure out, how do I fit in this new space that I have been given? What do I make out of it? How do I fit in? I never wanted to be assimilated. Even though it's interesting, because I did go to an American school in Ecuador, and I learned English. I mean, I knew English, but it's funny because I tell this story to my kids. I did know English, but when I came to the U.S., that first week, trying to listen in the news, I didn't understand a word.
Really?
Like I was, oh my God, what are they like? and to the day, Miranda, I still don't get it. I still don't get sayings. I still don't get understand some words that people are saying. And sometimes, I pass by a little bit. I don't know if this is true, like a little ignorant, because I'm like, what are you talking about? Or I don't understand what people are asking me or telling me. So, so it's this thing that you, as much as you live in a place, you are never going to fully immerse in it, because there is so much that you get, from where you're born till you are 18 years old, you're like your formative years,
Yeah.
that you don't get. Even, I mean, I have lived in this country how many years now, more than I lived in Ecuador, but I still don't relate to a lot of things that I wish I would. Even simple things like movies, names of movies, or
Right.
things like that people talk about, because that was part of their upbringing.
And that
Um,
like collective memory that people
exactly.
have who, were, in their 20s, in the 80s, in, the Texas or something, like this, like that
Yeah.
real, that, and that how it's so integral for bonding.
Yeah, and an anecdote again. So my boyfriend was telling me the other day about this massive killer person that everybody knew about. So he mentioned this name. I was like, "Who is this?" And he was like, "Really?" That kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
the thing is, Miranda, that sometimes, and actually throughout my art career, that has played a very huge role, because I haven't been able to connect fully, and I have always felt like an outsider to many of the art communities that I have been part of. So I have always felt that way, that I don't fit in completely, and it's been uh, it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy. But yeah, it's the connections that you acquire when you are young. Because even, like, again, I have lived in this country for so many years, but also, my ex-husband was Spanish speaking, and we were from the same culture. So I didn't have to in a way to learn and adapt to, if I would have, married an Anglo person, a U.S. citizen that has lived, his entire life here, or even, what I'm talking about. So yes, I have kind of kept myself within my familiar group.
This might be a good time to actually, because I feel like it certainly falls under the umbrella of all of this, and finding community when you are not in the city or the state or the
Yeah.
country that you grew up in. The Consejo Grafico Nacional that you are
Yeah.
currently the executive director of.
Yes.
Would you please let people know, well, I guess, first of all, just what it is and what does the organization do?
Of course, of course. So the Consejo Grafico Nacional is an independent coalition of printmaking workshops. We call them talleres. Uh, Formed to advance the capacity. I'm gonna read you the mission statement.
Perfect.
Formed to advance the capacity and legacy of Latino printmakers, inclusive of all Americas and the United States, through combination of collaborative projects, exhibitions, educational outreach, and conferences. The Consejo promotes the continuity of critical and cultural activism in contemporary art.
Beautiful.
So I was talking about how moving to Austin, Texas, kind of changed my life.
Yeah.
And it actually did. So all the years before, I have always been very active making art, and actually being in communities, diverse communities. In my art, my work has been accepted, and actually in widely different communities, but I never felt that my work was understood completely. I always felt that there was something that didn't click with people, and because it didn't click, it wasn't considered or respected as much as I would have wanted to. So I moved to Austin, Texas, in 2004, and the first month that I am there, it was such a strange thing. I felt that I was in Quito. I felt that I was not in Quito, but I felt the connection. I felt that oh my goodness, these people are like my people. The Mexican American community and the Mexican community in Austin, it was such a breath of fresh air. And little by little, I started feeling that I was home. Not only listening to Spanish all the time or most of the time, I would go to the supermarket and people will know Spanish and will speak Spanish. So just that, it made me feel, oh my God, so at home. The vegetation, the plants that grew there were the same plants that grew in Quito when I was growing up. So I felt such a connection just from the landscape and from the environment. So then when I moved there, of course, I was trying to, like I always did, because I moved to 15 different places, cities in the U.S. up to that point. So I always wanted to make connections and see, talk to galleries and talk to people and see who will be interested in my work, blah, blah, blah. So it was very interesting because not many people opened doors for me. I did until I met Sam Coronado from the Seria Project from Coronado Studios in Austin, Madison. Sam Coronado was the director, founder of the Seria Project, which actually is one of our taller members from Consejo Grafico Nacional. He had a call, so he invited Latino artists, to do residencies in his studio, and he opened a call, and it happened that I went to this gallery in Austin, and one of his brochures was in this gallery, and I picked up the brochure, and those are things that things that happen for a reason and happen at the right moment. Mm-hmm. So picking up that brochure was like this turning a corner in a way, that you turn a corner, you know what's going to be there, but and you have no idea what's going to happen, and you find that corner at the right time. So I picked up this brochure and saw that he was a Latino, actually Chicano, but and that he was calling for artists. So immediately I contacted them. I submitted my work. I applied, blah, blah. And right away, he opened doors for me. Something that didn't happen in Austin for me at that time. But he opened right away. Like he reviewed my application. He saw my work. And the next day he called me up and he said, Sandra, I'm really interested in your work. I would like to invite you to be a visiting artist. So I was like, wow. And the minute that I made that connection, Miranda, my life changed forever. He introduced me to all these world that I had not had the chance to be with, Hispanics, Latinos, speaking Spanish people, super important artists that have been working for forever, on similar things that I have, and just feeling that I had a home, that I had a niche, a place that I could go to. Yeah. So at that time, a little bit after, I was hired to teach at the University of Texas in Austin. So Sam Coronado. So I did a residency with him, and then I decided to volunteer and to help out at the Seria Print. So I became friends with him, and time went by, and I even became a board member of the Seria Project within a few years, and he introduced me to all these different people from Consejo Grafico Nacional. So La Seria Project was part of Consejo Grafico Nacional. By the way, Consejo Grafico Nacional was born, I would say, probably in the early 2000s, and the creator of this idea, of this group, was Gilberto Cárdenas, and he is a very well-known Latino art collector, and also a professor, and he has done a lot of very important things for Hispanics in the Latino community. He's a sociologist, a professor. So anyway, so he realized one day that there were all these talleres, because he had been collecting art from Latino artists all his life. And he knew all these people from different states that had origins, Latino, Hispanic origins. So he realized that there was a disconnect between all these talleres, all these people. So he wanted to bring together and connect them all. So he was the one who thought about doing this. So he started introducing people and connecting people, and that's when Consejo Grafico, well, it had a different name back then, but this is how all the talleres came together. So when I become part of the Serie project, the Serie was part of Consejo Grafico Nacional, who had already been formed, and they were having meetings. They had structure. They had been collaborating and doing a lot of exchanges among themselves. So I learned about them, and I became part of Consejo Grafico Nacional through the Serie project, and started to meet all these amazing people, and just getting to know them, and to realize that the art that I have been making, and the ideas, the concepts, the culture was so big, and I had no idea how influential and how big it was, because it wasn't talked about. I mean, it isn't. Well, maybe in the last few years, people know about our work more than before. But 20, 30 years ago, it was not very well known outside those places where it was recognized and where it was born. So I realized that I belonged as an artist somewhere. And I started making these relationships with all these people from different influences. So Consejo Grafico Nacional is composed currently of 13 different talleres. And we have, I'm gonna name them.
Yeah,
is that all right?
Please, yes.
So I'm gonna go alphabetically to not give priority to anybody. So we have Arceo Studio from Chicago. Rene Arceo is the director. We have Coronado Print Studio. Pepe Coronado is the director, and is currently housed in Austin, Texas. His studio just moved from New York City back to Austin, Texas. We have Dignidad Rebelde, which is in California, in the San Francisco area, and the directors are Melanie Cervantes and Jesus Barraza. We have El Nopal Press, conducted by Francesco Siqueiros. This is in Los Angeles, California. We have Monográfico Colectivo. The director is Marianne Sadowski. It's also in Los Angeles, California. We have Marichal Studio, led by Poli Marichal. And she was in Los Angeles, but now she went back to her country in Puerto Rico. So she now has her studio in Puerto Rico. We have Pájaro Editions, led by Juan Fuentes. This is also in the San Francisco area. We have Rio Mar Studio from Indiana. The director is Ramiro Rodriguez. We have Self-Help Graphics. This is a huge organization in Los Angeles, California as well. And this is led by Betty Avila. We have the Serie project. As I was talking about, Sam Coronado was the director of this place. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2014. Now it's not operating as before. It has been restructured. So his wife, Jill Ramirez, is starting it up again. We have my taller is Fernandez Art, Present Taller, and I am in New Jersey. We have Taller Arte del Nuevo Amanecer, Tana, which is in in California also, and the director is currently Juan Arenas. And part of this taller, and actually the founder, is Malaquías Montoya, who is a big name in the Chicano graphic arts movement. He is one of the older folks, and he's a legend for us. So he's no longer the director. He's supporting now the organization. We have and the last one, Taller Boricua, Rafael Tufiño Print Shop, and this is in New York City, and the director is Marcos Dimas. for the Taller Boricua and for the printmaking area, Nitza Tufiño. So as you see, we have talleres from different places in the United States, all over the United States. And these talleres have also connections with so many people from other places. Initially, when the Consejo Grafico Nacional was formed, we had people from Mexico, Mexico City, not Mexico City, Mexico. Artemio Rodriguez was part of it. You probably recognize the name.
I do, yes.
Yeah, he used to be, with his Manos Mágicas Press, he used to be a member of Consejo Grafico Nacional some years back. And like that, we have connections with print shops all over South America, Mexico, so that's a short.
That sounds amazing, and I hope that list of names inspires people to research and get in touch, or maybe even if they heard the name of one that's located in their city they didn't know about, because it sounds like it's a really marvelous network of people doing good work. Yeah.
Yes, and the beauty of it is that each taller focuses on something specifically. I mean, some of them do community outreach work. Some of them have visiting artist studios. Some of them are just studios, individual studios. And if you go to our website, www.consejograficonacional.com, you are going to see you're going to get information about all of us. And like Miranda said, if you are near any of them, please contact them, because that is the way that you can connect and be part of it. We put out portfolio exchanges every year. From in the last 3 years, we started to do it every year. So each taller invites artists from outside their own talleres to participate, and be part of the portfolio. So if you make a connection with the taller, you could be invited to be part of these exchanges. And if you look at the website, we have the portfolios up there listed. You're going to see the diverse work and the diversity of artists that we have and that we invite. It's if you are, especially if you are of Latino origin, and you're interested in knowing more about your culture, about your roots, about printmaking in the U.S., connect with us or send us a message. I'm the current director of the group, and if you send me an email through the website, I'll be happy to answer your questions and establish a conversation.
That's wonderful. I hope that this reaches a lot of people and they get inspired to get in touch and to build that network and stronger ties and stronger print exchanges and more community and all of the good stuff that brings people to printmaking, really. Yeah.
Exactly. Printmaking is community, and that's the beauty of it. Yes.
Yeah. And so that's where people can find the Consejo Grafico Nacional. Where can they find you? Where can they find Sandra C. Fernandez and her work?
Yes. So you can go to my website. It's sandrafernandez.info. You can you can connect me through there or on Instagram at sfernandezart. You can email me at studio@sandrafernandez.info. You can, those are the initial contacts that you can do with me. And I love to talk to people. I love to share, and I can connect you with people from Consejo Grafico, and I'm just very interested in connections and in community. So please don't hesitate to contact me. And if you want to know more about my work, obviously, I would love to talk to you more about my work. You can see a lot of what I have done on my website as well.
Yeah, I had a whole list of questions here about your incredible artist books that we didn't even get to. So we're just going to have you back on again sometime so we can dive into all those details as well. Or maybe you'll get to chat about it a bit, I don't know, in the Shop Talk segment or something, because you've got an incredible portfolio of work, mixed media of all kinds, and really nicely documented. So I really encourage everyone to look at Sandra's website for sure. It is a treat. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Miranda. That's very sweet of you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sandra. I have had such an incredible time talking to you and hearing your story, and I really look forward to sharing it with everyone. And then, of course, you'll connect with Ronaldo to do your Spanish language, and we'll do the double release and just build community all up and down these here Americas. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm so excited to have met you, to have talked with you. And the work that you guys do is very inspiring. And I want to thank you for doing it.
Well, that's our show for this week. Join me again next week when my guest will be Stacey Lynn Waddell. We'll talk about her use of branding irons as printmaking, the late great actress Butterfly McQueen, and living the slow life in a manic world. This episode, like all episodes, was written and produced by me, Miranda Metcalf, with editing by Timothy Pauschak and music by Joshua Weber. I'll see you next week.